I think you mentioned, Russell, that I'm an Edtech enthusiast. And frankly speaking, it's not something that I was passionate about, say, 4 or 5 years ago. That we made a difference in a human being's life that goes beyond selling a product. I think that has been a phenomenal experience for me. One of the biggest challenges is that learning is not democratized. Like I said, I'm not a technical person, right? But I love watching content that helps me understand the technology that is entering the market.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are back with another episode of Tech Talk 360, unveiling one bite at a time. Today, we have a very special guest on our show, one of my favorites. It's Kaushali Kusumapala, the marketing director of Hemas International, and also the award winner of the top 50 professional and career women global awards. And also, to mention, she is an Edtech enthusiast. Hi, Kaush. How are you doing today?
Really good, Russell, and how are you? Excited to be a part of the episode.
Doing great. I'm doing great. And thank you so much for coming in and accepting my invitation for the show. Means a lot. And hope today's episode will inspire the youth and give them a great message today. Let's start off things. First of all, Kaush, who is Kaushali Kusumapal? Let's start it from there.
All right. So I think you've already made an introduction that I'm in marketing. I've been in the field for close to 15 years now, and I've been having the fortune of working on some amazing global brands as well as local brands. But I think what we also forget is that all professionals, what they bring to the table is not just the professional aspect. There's a lot of things I'm passionate about in my personal life. And some of those elements happen to be one is fitness, number two is spirituality, and anything and everything to do with creativity. And I think the combination of what makes me, passionate in my personal life definitely has a flow through into my professional life. So that, in a nutshell, is who I am.
Amazing. Let's just jump into this course. So, what actually keeps you motivated in continuing this inspirational landscape that you are in marketing, and how this drives every day what you do and what you do for the people out there in the company? What just keeps you going, that driving to do the job that you're doing right now?
For me, I think there are three aspects. The first aspect is that I was really fortunate at a very young age to figure out that marketing is where my passion was, and since then, being able to work on really meaningful brands that not only are driving a business outcome but are driving social outcomes, are looking at new ways of unlocking consumer value. I think that has been hugely interesting. I think I'm also a naturally very, very curious person. So I have a thirst for learning. What that means is I always push myself to try new things, to learn new things, and I figure out how I bring that energy into work. I think you mentioned, Russell, that I'm an edtech enthusiast. And frankly speaking, it's not something that I was passionate about, say, 4 or 5 years ago, but simply because I needed to bring a new type of energy into work. I had to explore new, new avenues of adding value to the business. Just sort of watching content or reading, and just sort of having a mindset of experimenting at work sort of brought those sort of ways of unlocking value to the system. So I think that natural curiosity and thirst for learning have really served me well. And really going back into working on meaningful brands and what that means to me as a person. I've been really, really fortunate to work on brands, as I mentioned, who've looked at not just sort of driving a one dimensional business result, but looked at how we can create value for different communities. So how can we give back, and how can we create a brand connect in the way we're giving back to society? And I think that, to me, on a personal note, has been hugely impactful. To be able to go to bed knowing that we've made a difference in a human being's life that goes beyond selling a product, I think that has been a phenomenal experience for me.
Yeah,
Uh, and thirdly, I think the most important equation is the people equation. And I see people equation in two ways. There are the people that might be a part of your team, that might be your colleagues, might be your immediate team that you're truly passionate about, and you really want to secure their welfare. And when you can go into work and create an environment for people to thrive in, I think that's hugely important. But I also like to acknowledge the second type of people within any work environment, and I'm sure this is true of work as it is in our personal lives, and these are the more challenging people. And these are the people you're not going to see eye to eye. You will have not just points of difference, you may have difference in your set of values. To me, both of these types of people are really important in a work environment, because the second part of people, or the second bucket of people who challenge you, actually bring out the best in you as well. Because then you need to either take on new information or a new point of view, or you need to be able to be strong in your values and your ethics, and to hold strong within your opinion. And these people make you better as well. These people also can fuel your passion, your commitment, because they bring in a nuance of a challenge. So to me, all of these things ultimately make me passionate, make me sort of go into work, not see it as work, see it as a critical component of my life and what drives me. And that's the sort of energy I think you need to be successful.
that's some inspiring words out there. Just moving on, I think this not kind of new industry, but edtech is a word you mentioned throughout, and we've been speaking a lot about it also. So, as an edtech enthusiast, how do you see this role? How important is it to our country and also for the world and the future of education technology, and how does this play a major role in someone's lives and in companies as well?
I think when you take education, and maybe let's focus from Sri Lanka and then go outwards, one of the biggest challenges is that learning is not democratized. What I mean by that is the quality of learning in different segments or different walks of life would hugely differ. The kind of exposure and the kind of inspiration that we feed into children will completely differ based on the segments you're in. EdTech has the opportunity to completely revolutionize how we learn, who gets to be exposed to different kind of learnings, and as a result, democratize um, the learning landscape. Let's sort of dive into what I mean by that. I think perhaps and hopefully the notion of premium education institutes and who gets access to that is going to change. Even if you think of, the, American institutes and stuff like that, whether you're talking about Harvard and Yale and whatnot, traditionally, you've had the cream of the crop in terms of intellect who's been able to get access to these educational institutes, or the people who've had the absolute resources to be able to access that kind of education, right? Now, if you take just that dimension of saying really high quality education, and now if you think of today's landscape, and you just hop on to Coursera, right? And you
Yeah.
see that even these top-notch universities have various courses available at a fraction of the cost. Now, much more people get access to that quality education without moving from their homes. So it's not only that education, the course in itself, the experience of that course is getting delivered at a fraction of the cost, but your migration cost to get to that education is completely eliminated. So, I mean, that's an extreme example of how, you can get access to international scale education while sitting in your home in Sri Lanka, and how that's sort of changing the landscape. But that's also true of Sri Lankan education, right? So let's take a situation that we are all aware of. Whether you agree with this situation or not is irrelevant. Let's talk about tuition classes, right? Now, some of the best tuition class teachers are available in Nugegoda, Maharagama, Kurunegala, and so on. So these are the hubs, right? And traditionally, kids in and around the area are the ones who are able to access these best quality teachers. If you were traveling from, say, far off, the cost to both the parent and the kid was immense. Time costs, travel costs, and so on. So just the
True.
commitment.
Yeah, that's true.
Now that whole thing is being eliminated, right? Now, to me, again, that's another aspect of how education can get democratized by using edtech, the simplest forms of edtech. But let's now take a far greater dimension of education, not just about getting access to it, but are we having quality conversations about what it means to be a future-ready citizen, right? Now, what does it mean to be a future-ready citizen? If you think of even Sri Lanka, over the last so many years, our syllabus hasn't changed. But we know that even if you take the last 2 years, the world has changed. The world has done a 180. So there is what the syllabus can do for you, and there is what the world needs of you, right? So that means there are many more subjects out there that's going to be relevant for you to be a, like I said, a future-ready citizen. Number two is more and more, whether it's educators or psychologists across the globe, they're talking about different methods of learning. How you learn might be very different to how I learn, and that sort of the kind of thinking around that has evolved a lot, right? So what that means is through various edtech platforms, now you can get access to methods of learning that will be much more suitable for you, right? So now you're getting, not only are you getting access to education that is of international quality or the highest quality that the country can offer you, but you're also getting exposed to future-ready subjects. That you're also getting access to more of a personalized learning experience that's going to get the best out of you. Now, what that means from an edtech perspective is through various technologies that are embedded into certain systems, or the systems themselves are able to assess you and customize that experience for you, is able to track you, and essentially take this really dreary topic of education, which is never really fun for most people, and make it much more engaging for you. So you are going to be a lifelong learner. So for me, it's if you think of the future of Sri Lanka as well, which is to say that we need to be much more productive citizens. We need to create a country where we have more taxpayers, we're bringing in more dollars or revenue into this country. You can't do that by prescribing to a system that's about 30 years old, right? Especially if you're thinking about 20 years from now. So the only way to get 4.5 million kids, or let's say 20 million people, because it's not only about kids learning today, right? It's about, maybe it's a mom who has been a stay-at-home mom, but they need dual incomes today. If you want access to higher quality learning while you're sitting at home watching your kids, this is the only way this is probably one of the best ways you can get access to that. So to answer your question, Russell, that's obviously why I find this whole subject fascinating. It's not because I have the technical experience around it. It's simply because I think you can really revolutionize the well-being of a population by utilizing it.
A small follow-up question to that. In terms of edtech in Sri Lanka, have we started the change or we are just in the minimal level?
I think there's change happening. I think there are organizations that are looking at making a change. I think when private organizations, NGOs, and government come together is when that equation really works really well. I don't think it can be these entities running separate races. So I think Sri Lanka may have more opportunity for these three stakeholders to work together better, because at the end of the day, when all parties work together is when you can unlock value for everyone.
Yeah, that answers my question the best way. Just move away from edtech for a bit, and let's talk this for the youth and the people who are the viewers who are out there, to build a personal brand or make their own brand. So how do you say, what do you believe are the essentials, to build a proper brand presence in today's competitive landscape, and how to just keep the brand standing out and making them give a effective and a productive message to the country or people out there?
So I'm going to break your question into two parts. One is what's called a personal brand, and then the second one is to really think about brands in general, right? Because the two things are quite separate. So let's touch upon personal brand, which I wouldn't say I know a lot about, but I think I'm generally a corporate brand person. So, but let's kick off with the harder part of it. I think when it comes to personal brand, number one is you got to be confident in yourself. I think in some of the discussions I've had, even with the youngsters in my team, there's always this reservation of putting something out there. So there's always this question of, will I be accepted? Will what I do be good enough? But frankly speaking, who cares? Just put yourself out there like you are, and for which I have great admiration and respect for. And if it resonates with someone, even if it resonates with one person, that's good enough to kick off with. And you'll find your vibe as you go, right? So I think number one is, doing that self-work to be able to showcase something authentic to the world. Number two, I think I keep going back to figure out what you're passionate about. As long as you are passionate about talking on a particular topic, that energy is going to come through in whatever content you're making, and that's going to flow back into how your personal brand is experienced. So I think these two things are the only advice I can say, because again, like I said, I wouldn't tout to be a personal brand expert. So your second question,
Yeah.
So I want to add though, in terms of brands in general, right, which is outside of personal brands. Before I dive into brands, I think I want to dive into what I think would be of great business value. And I think of value to Sri Lanka, right? I think if you read up on our history is based on agriculture and arts and crafts. And somewhere down the line, we have lost our roots and our heritage. Today, Sri Lanka is in a very, very interesting place because we do need to drive our economy, right? None of us are going to survive and thrive unless we work for the collective good. And for me to do this, I think it's about going back to our roots and unlocking value there. So if you talk about brand, great, we can keep talking about what the rest of the world is doing and try and replicate it here. I have no issues with that. I think there is a place and there is still value to be unlocked with bringing something that is international and replicating it here. But I also say there is a huge amount of opportunity. We have great amount of biodiversity. We do seem to be unable to unlock great value in the amazing ingredients we have in this country, great agriculture we have in this country. So I think there's a lot of value unlocking to be done there. I think we have amazing crafts. We tout of the value of the crafts in Africa and all these other countries, but I think we need to look at how we uplift the arts and crafts that we have inherited in this country. So how do we take more of that out into the world? We shouldn't be ashamed of being Sri Lankan. We have to embrace what it means to be Sri Lankan. And I think there is value to be unlocked there. Now, what you do as a result of that, as a brand, right? What meaning and imagery you want to wrap around that is, I think, a secondary question. So I think what I would love to encourage the youth of Sri Lanka is to sort of really embrace what it is to be Sri Lankan, build truly Sri Lankan brands. And what that means is to say there is a lot of, good vibes and just great energy you can create around a brand if you just try and stay true to who we are. That's my 2 cents on the matter.
It's a really good explanation, Kaush. So the next up, the thing I really wanted to ask is the award under your name. Let's just talk about just tell this to the women empowerment people, the women out there, the women in tech. That's where I just find along. So just a small message to the girls and the women out there. How let's just we can just keep it short. A small brief on how you managed to get it and hit the spot on that way. Let's just talk about that.
Okay, so this is a question that's a little
think
more interesting because you're asking me about it. So I think the best advice I can give you is, look, it goes back to I love what I do. There's never been a moment where I have second guessed whether I should be in this field. And every single day when I go in, I take my heart and soul. So my heart and soul is always reflected in the brands that I work on. I think that's as simple as it gets. The awards, the accolades will follow. Your success, your milestones will follow. I don't have a recipe to tell anyone to go and win an award. But what I have is a recipe of how I've worked and how I brought what I'm passionate about and love into the work that I do. And, when I sit on a piece of work, when I sit on a piece where we're creating something new, whether it's an innovation, whether it's a brand, whether, it's, anything, whether it's a communication piece, I definitely hold myself to a different level of making sure that piece of work is ideal for the people that we're positioning it for. So let me just stick to that point. I am passionate about Sri Lankan consumers, right? So even if I am in a, a CSR event, let's call it, right? Or if I'm going on a market visit, whatever it might be, to me, it's not about the quantity of these things that we're doing, but are we having meaningful conversations with people? The second you're having a meaningful conversation with a human being, you can take that energy into work and create amazing brands. You can create amazing products, right? So to me, if what I'm trying to tell you, Russell, is I don't know how I won that award. I think that was a very kind and generous panel of people who, you know, selected me. But I think the body of work that I've done and what's inspired me are some of these conversations we've had with everyday people, whether you, again, like I said, whether you have conversations with people or whether you dive into our
True.
history or you dive into our stories as Sri Lankans. I think that just allowed me to do what I do.
Amazing. I just want to know, that's just a personal question that I had added in.
Sure.
So we are just coming towards the clock. The time is going over, but just wanted to give some, let's give some career advice to the youth if they want to, start off where they, what they, some people, recent episode also I just spoke all the time when we were back then, not us, I mean everyone back then, it was just the general things that we hear: doctor, engineer, lawyer, all the main five types of stuff. So now on, we have very niche markets going on, and their salaries are overloading, and they are finding for youth talent out there. So, and you really might know on the all the brands you have worked so far, how they open up new paths. So that career advice, and maybe we can tell the parents as well if they're listening in, that don't limit their journeys to one specific path, and to tell them to do what they love. Let's just talk about that also.
Okay. I think it goes back to the piece that we were talking about in EdTech, right? The
Yeah,
next 20 years is going to be hugely different to the world today. And that rate of change it's obvious. It's going to be hugely accelerated, right? So I think the biggest thing is to teach children how to learn, to be frank, right? Um, because even, let's say you're 18 and you're on the cusp of getting a degree, right? Let's say you're there right now. Your world in the next 10, 20 years will change so much. Your degree is going to be completely irrelevant anyway. So this is not a question of what can we do for the 6-year-olds. It's really a
true.
question of, can you train your children to love learning and to always learn? Now, teaching children to paraphrase something is not learning, and it's not cultivating a love for learning, right? So I don't know what the world will hold for us in the next 20 years, as much as you and I didn't realize that AI was going to be the big topic, if we were sitting in 2020, right? So, but if you can create a framework where children can dismantle things, ask the questions why, figure out how they explore for themselves, right? I think that's the only skill that you can teach kids. And the second thing there is, it's not about saying doctor, teacher, lawyer is irrelevant. I think they're still
Yeah,
relevant.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It just goes back to, it's not even a case of saying, okay, what are kids passionate about? But the reason I say, how do we teach children to learn, is you might have been trained to be a doctor today, but today we hear stories of how surgeons have become artists, or, because they figured out at 45 years of age that really they want to use their skills of precision with, being an artist, right? So if you can learn any skill at any age, I think that's the only thing that will enable us to be adaptive future. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my
I
only
mean,
advice.
yeah, that's just I also wanted to add in this. How are you actually coping up with AI, the new technology, and how are you using the new technology out there, ChatGPT, all that stuff? Let's
Yeah.
just
So two things. I'm a fan, right? Obviously, I watch a lot of content. Like I said, I'm not a technical person, right? But I love watching content that helps me understand the technology that is entering the market, um, so that I can be much more productive when I go into work, right? So anything that makes me more effective and efficient, I'm willing to learn. So I always sort of consume that kind of knowledge, whether I subscribe to certain newsletters or watch something, um, on YouTube or whatever. Very very simple things you can do. Whether you're on when you're driving, you can continue to listen to a podcast or whatever it is. Very simple stuff, right? The next thing is, honestly speaking, I have been fortunate enough, at least in my previous role, to surround myself with very young people, right, who are into digital and technology and what. And I think they teach me things, right? So every single day when I interact with them, I'm inspired by them. And it's gonna be completely okay to be in leadership positions where you don't understand something, but your job is to create a vision and an environment where young people and new thinking can thrive. That's all you gotta do. And I think even as I sit mid-age now, I think I understand that there's going to be a skill set in the next 10, 20 years that I'm not going to have, and that's perfectly fine as long as I keep vision alive and surround myself with people that are bringing in those new skill sets.
amazing. This is actually a general thing I wanted to add on to the podcast. So let's just finish it off with this. What is that one final thing that you have to tell to the youth of Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka as as a country with all the stuff that is happening? And like I always say, some of my friends are planning to go, and most of my friends are gone again. Skill migration, and people are planning to leave. And but people mention that we do have the best talent, we can retain them. So, what is that one final thing that you can tell to the youth and Sri Lanka as a country?
I think that's a very loaded question, but let me try and give it a crack. When things are the roughest is when there's also opportunity. um, I think if you are resilient, you can figure out what you can do differently, especially in a place where human resource is low. You have a greater chance to shine if you choose to see it that way. That's number one. Number two, like I told you, I think Sri Lanka is a completely untapped market. I go back to say, you look outside your window, I look outside my window. We're a hugely resourceful country, right? So just look out there. Look at the things we have in this beautiful island nation. Look at the value you can bring into the country and compare and contrast that to building a life overseas. There is no doubt. I did my degree in Australia and I had an amazing experience, but I've chosen to come back. There is no denying that there is a lot of opportunities in other countries as well. I'm not denying that. However, I think for those who are debating this question, when things get roughest is when things can also, you can hunt for opportunities and become those rising stars.
Yes, that completely gives what I wanted on that question. So, with that, I think we have come to the final minutes of the podcast. Kaush, if there is someone who wants to reach you out or connect with you, let's just give them how they can reach to you out on and what are the ways that they have.
Sure, I think I'm readily available on LinkedIn, and anyone who ever sends me a message generally gets a response from me. I think that's how you reached out to me as well.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm quite easily accessible when it comes to LinkedIn, especially when it comes to young people, again, like yourself. Whenever they need support and there is some level of support I can give them, whether it's sharing knowledge or, um, maybe sometimes just participation in certain things like this, I'm always really, really open to that. So I think that's the best mode to get in touch with me.
finally, thank you so much, Kaush, for joining with me today. And uh, today's episode was, I think it actually, motivates youth out there, the viewers that are tuned in. Thank you so much for coming today, and all the best with everything that you do. And thank you for being part of the podcast.
Thank you, Russell, and I wish you the very best. I think you did a fantastic job today, and I hope to see you shine in the future.
That is another episode of Tech Talk 360, unveiling one bite at a time. Kaush,